how many times I'm talking about IT leader and they're basically like, yes, 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 technology, but have you thought about empathy?
You can get every interview book in the world, but when you interview somebody, you literally just need one question depending on what type of function they're going to do at what level.
Do you think that the current sort of AI era is a profounder change?
I think search got significantly better. It's way easier to find things. The more profound thing right now is the speed of release.
There is a narrative about the way that we think AI is going to unfold, which is effectively like it's going to just gut entry-level jobs.
So I think that the market is showing a negative trend, which I'm hoping stops. I firmly believe we absolutely need folks in the workforce. Yeah, we do need people to do jobs.
All right, so I'm talking today with Bob Genchi. He is the CIO and Chief Security Information Officer at Scale Capital. I've known Bob for a while. I was really excited about this conversation to get in here and talk to him a little bit about both his career through IT, but also what he sees in the Valley, because he's sort of at the conflux of a whole bunch of amazing stuff going on. Bob, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Matt. I generally enjoy speaking to you, so this is now the public gets a view of the private conversation.
Well, so to get us started, what I'd love to do is kind of baseline a little bit. Tell us a little bit about how you got in that chair. So what was your career path that took you into IT and then over to Scale Capital, big milestones along the way?
Started with an internship in IT at Gap Inc. while I was still going to school here at Santa Clara. I was blessed to get this internship. There were only 3 IT interns at the time, and it felt like close to 100, it's probably in the 70s in the brands. And so it was one of these kind of rare opportunities. And I was getting a degree in MIS at Santa Clara, so it was just kind of logical to get an IT job. And it was a really fun environment at the time. Gap was growing this the late 90s. It was just a fun time to be at Gap Inc. And in post-school, it was working in startups in various jobs. A little bit of project management and professional services, a little bit of QA. Really volatile, right? This is early 2000s now, volatile time. And then things didn't quite work out in startup land, and Gap sort of came calling again. And I moved back into a PM role there in IT, and spent 7.5 years doing various different jobs at various different departments. And that was probably the best education. I consider that my postgraduate work, because it was they had outsourcing. They outsourced a big chunk of IT to IBM. Learned about the outsourcing process, how terrible that can be. It was really a destruction on morale. A lot of jobs that got displaced. The initial part was great, and then it got really bad, and it was a productivity thing. So it was some of the things that I'm in tune with what you guys are working on at Fixify. So some of the things that you're tracking around these types of metrics, here I was just absorbing okay, yeah, definitely don't do that. In the event that I get to a place that's big IT and I'm in leadership, that probably focus a little more on, cuts that, the non-measurables at the time. Again, early 2000s, nobody's really measuring that, right? I think, one of the early jobs I did at Gap was working in help desk, and they had the big board up on the wall. It was a digital board, and it just showed, active calls. We had a couple different call centers, so it showed calls by where those call centers were located, average wait times, closure rates. There were the very traditional metrics. But every time I took a phone call, somebody, people are just upset, and the general sentiment was terrible. It was not great. So I'm okay, don't focus on that stuff, right? But yeah, so it was Gap Inc. And then somebody who I had worked with in one of those startups was working at Salesforce and was kind of kicking up this skunkworks type project internally. And he's like, hey, I want you to come and run projects over here. I'm like, awesome. That sounds great. That lasted all of 9 months. They ran out of funding, and those projects got shuttered pretty quickly. And they kind of flipped their focus to this big healthcare project that they were working on, which we were uninvolved with. And also, if you look at the history of Salesforce, they went totally into M&A versus kind of building cross-platform. And so after Salesforce, it was going back into startup land and working more focused on biz apps, and ultimately parlaying some of that into doing IT. Like there was a little bit of turnover, and I got the opportunity to be able to run IT along with biz apps. And so at Xactly, that's when I got the chair, and kind of been in it ever since. So it was Xactly, and then Couchbase for a short stint, and now here at Scale for 7 years. But this is my first VC job, and I think the cool thing is the firm wanted somebody that was an outsider, really bringing in that outsider perspective, really bringing, the Valley mindset to this job. But also I have the ability, when there is an investment in the portfolio where somebody needs a little bit of guidance, because we are investing in early stage companies, to be able to bring that perspective and how to sort of scale the org. And that was from, just having done it 1.5 times. But yeah, just having that knowledge. But it really starts, that baseline was that Gap Inc., like seeing a really big function, seeing all the bad stuff that happened, understanding why that stuff happened, and how could you basically not, like avoid it if you were starting over. So that's the story.
Actually, pulling on that for a second, because one of the things I'm super interested in, I've sort of got this perception, and I've talked to people about this before. In my own career, I've had this sort of like, you start out as an individual contributor and you're sort of solving technical problems. You end up like managing, and so now your team is solving technical problems and you're solving management problems, and then you end up as a director. And I know that there's like, in my career path, there's been this sort of like these aha moments along the way. And particularly as I got to be the VP and then the C-level, there's like these moments where you're like, oh, that's why that is. Yeah, okay. Like when you think about that, like, did you have any of those along the way where you're like, wow, this was a real eye-opening, like my sort of visibility expanded, new horizons, it really changed the way I thought about stuff. Any moments like that for you?
Yeah, I think that we all have like the micro moments. It was there was this general sentiment, especially in the big, in that big IT environment, where I always felt like I was just hitting my head against a wall or a glass pane. Like there was, it always felt like things could have been easier, but people and process and really just a general, like a low level sentiment made things go a lot slower. But I also conflated some ideas in there because I was young and naive. Okay. And I think what was really helpful early on for me was not so much like the ahas that I was personally having. It was like these micro ahas, but it was comboed with some senior folks who colored it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's been like, it's like, I can think of like the folks that have been either in leadership or mentorship that gave me some real simple guidance when I was hitting those walls that sort of pulled my head up, because I felt like I was spinning my wheels super fast. And it was, like one specific one where I was literally hitting my head against the wall. I, pull up and it's like, look, these folks, they're career managers, now if you go about doing that, you could be replacing their jobs. And you need to stop focusing on replacing and automation and start focusing on improvement. Okay. And also like thinking about think about their perspective. I think it's like too often people get frustrated and they're not able to basically like one of the things as admins that we can do in a lot of these tools is like assume user. And then you get to see what their problem is. And I think that if we just did that in life a little bit, like just assume that user. Yeah. And like understand like why are they so hot about this one? Why are they breaking their pick on this one thing? What is the deal? And once you sort of understand that, then it's like, okay, cool. Let's find a middle ground. Let's really get to a place where we can. And if that person even then is like really frustrating, there's other methods you can use to sort of get past that. But for the most part, you end up it ends up being the right thing to do, not only like for your own sanity, but for the business as well. Because if your intentions are positive, and positive meaning like, let's make this thing run leaner and faster and more productive and more profitable, especially in IT, right? We want to lower the expenses, but also lower the barriers while keeping security good. Then it's going to be a positive thing.
It's fascinating. One of the things that I've been so interested in as we've sort of been journeying in sort of IT, and particularly talking to IT leaders, is how many times I'm talking about IT leader and they're basically like, yes, technology, but have you thought about empathy, right? Like and there seems to be this leadership moment where people end up going, actually, in order to accomplish my real mission. And so back to those metrics in sort of your big IT example, like, okay, well, yeah, your SLAs, like I always call those your how much wood could a woodchuck chuck metrics. Like those things need to be good, but those don't actually indicate that you're good. It just means that you've like met the bar, and that empathy step, takes it into that kind of next level. I'm super curious. You did mention, as you made a distinction, I'm kind of interested in this, or at least I think you are, between big IT, big IT, and sort of what you saw, sort of the gap, and then like in a smaller environment. And I'm curious, like, are there other things that, as you're thinking about like the difference between a small team, like doing IT for a smaller organization versus doing IT for a bigger organization, that are things that you say, hey, like there's some structural differences and there's differences in the way you would lead the organizations?
Yeah, because you're like you're just much more reliant in a very, very small org. There's no room for fat. It is muscle and bone and skin, and even like I empathize truly with folks that are running a negative lean environment where it's there's just not enough people, and they're just suffering. Like I completely feel for those folks. Sometimes I feel like that even in a small org where it does feel like it's enough, but it's still not enough. So there's no room for bullshit, and you kind of have to have the one-on-ones are a little bit tactical. Like it's like, okay, let's talk about like the start stop continues, your top 3, what are we focused on next week, next month, when do we start planning for next year. You have those tactical, but it's also the okay, are we working on this as a partnership a little more than if it was just a traditional manager to direct report, right? Because especially in the big hierarchies, you have that, and you've got job families, and like I would like to get to that next level in the column that I'm in. I was talking to my brother today. He's working in a really big place. They've got letter number distinctions. You're a D3 and you want to be a D2, or you'll move to the left and you'll be a C4. Yeah. And it's like there's a completely different construct to the one-on-ones, and what does success look like, and what does progression look like, versus when there's 3 of us. Like a promotion isn't really real because you're kind of already doing the promoted job while also doing the demoted job.
Yeah. You get like a one nice dinner that night, and then you're back to the grindstone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm probably not answering your question really well, Matt.
Well, let me pull out another thing there, because I think that does resonate tremendously. I'm curious, like, and I'm going to ask you for like a counterfactual that may be impossible to do, but I'm thinking you mentioned that gap was sort of like both like sort of primary and then graduate school for you, in terms of like, hey, you got to see the organization run, you got to go like learn like right out of school, and then as you progressed. If you were going back and doing it again, do you think you would learn more faster by being at a big company or being at a small company? Like if I was starting out my career, what should I aim for? Like what would your advice for young you be?
Again, selfishly, I love the big to small, but you have to be able to swim in a gigantic pool, and then also be ready to swim the raging river. Okay. I think that swimming the raging river, if you get thrown into the gentle pool, you'd be like, nah, right away, I can't do it. No, this is not going to work for me. I don't think that it's still possible. There are people, there are folks that function in a small environment that could absolutely crush it in a big. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it happen, and it's because the skill set is applicable in both ways. They're, I think about like how Amazon is run today. Somebody who I'm still close with, who I consider a close friend, that we worked together in a previous life. They had like 30 plus direct reports, and that's just the Amazon way. To me, that's a very startup kind of mentality in a very big place. So I don't know if it's it's like a transitive property. This big place and this big place are the same. Yeah. It's just the culture of the place. And I think that there's a better correlation, Matt, to like wiring and culture, right? Like, and like I think the word culture even gets bandied about, and it means different things to different people. I think it's like modality, right? It's like, what is the modality of this business?
Okay.
What is the speed at which they work? What is the speed of which somebody has to operate to be successful? What is the tolerance for learning?
Okay.
And, like general aptitude of the place as well, right? Like, are the people around me, it's aptitude wise in a place where I'm going to be stretched,
Okay.
or like, gosh, it's going to be not so much a stretch.
Yeah.
And what do I feed off of? Like there's some levers there.
Okay.
But I don't think that there's a general correlation, nor would I apply like, oh yeah, big to small, that's the way. I would say like, it depends. And it sucks because we want there to be like an easy answer, but we're humans, and is anything easy? Nah.
Well, no, I mean, that totally makes sense. And I think the idea of sort of looking at it, and I think a slightly more nuanced lens of like, okay, let's look at the modalities of the operating cadences of the business. And do you want to work in a place that's like high intensity and like high ownership and this sort of stuff? You want to work in a place that's a little bit more hardcore, but you should probably have more of a blast shield. But that like totally makes sense. I know having, tons of friends who do startups, and those startups then get acquired by a larger company. Many of them end up then making the decision at that point, I'm pulling the ripcord and going back to a startup. But some of them have actually ended up really flourishing in the larger environment because they're like, oh, I'm learning a different set of skills and this sort of thing. And so like there's good and bad in both of them. So that kind of resonates and makes sense. So I want to pivot a little bit, and so one of the things that I'm interested in, and I ask a lot of IT leaders about this, is we're living in a time, at least if we read LinkedIn, of profound change. And I'm super curious, since you and I are of similar vintages, like we've been through a couple of eras of profound change, and they really have been. Like, I'm curious, one, do you think that the current sort of AI era is a profounder change than like other historical moments? If so, why? And if not, why not?
I think I'd have to apply profound to things like the day we ripped the last server out of the closet. That was like a profound milestone. And I didn't get to experience it until I was here. And it didn't get to happen until we were in lockdown. And they're like, okay, fine, we'll get rid of the storage in the closet and just move it to box. And it's like, okay, cool. Thank you. But again, it's like, I think that there's real inflection moments. And I think that because we're more creatures of habit, it takes a little bit of that, what is that? We have this chemical and it's fine on its own, and it's fine, but we kind of need to blend the two, and then the sparks start happening.
Catalyst needs to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that there is, there's some correlation to what you can do with AI agents. I put air quotes because people call them all AI agents, but we just called them triggered jobs before, for most of those. There has to be a grain of salt to what we're actually labeling these things. And unfortunately, because marketing departments exist, and there's marketing budgets, and there's enterprises, that give 3-letter acronyms to things, everything will get its label. So I think that there is some profound things happening, to be honest. I think search got significantly better. It's like, it's way easier to find things. It doesn't mean that the results are, still perfect. They'll never be perfect because it's, the humans are involved in the process of creating and also informing. So it's not going to be totally perfect, right? Like, what's the best cheesesteak in town? It's never going to tell you what the best cheesesteak in town, because 5 different people think there's 5 different great cheesesteaks. But I think what is really happening is we're trying to espouse that the advancements in speed and in compute are profound enough to say, yes, this is it, where I think that we need to just temper that a little bit.
Okay.
And be smart about how we're implementing it. I just think the more profound thing right now is the speed of release.
Okay.
And, we've really, again, I still remember a time when Oracle Financials was releasing on a cadence that required, CDs to be printed and, like
stuff.
to be delivered and you to install in a data center and the documents and, in a .1 release was substantial.
Yeah.
Now OpenAI
.1, they always waited to the .2 just so they found all the bugs in the .1.
That's right. That's right. And now OpenAI's got a release every 20 minutes. And that's just not, we're not sort of, I don't know if we're totally wired for that. And so I think we'll figure it out. But to come full circle, I think that there is the advancements were pretty significant. I'm still waiting for like the monetization to kind of screw it up a little bit, similar to the AdWords thing, right? And that'll never be perfect either. That's just the way society runs. So I don't know. I'm still excited about like what tools are doing to revolutionize different verticals and what tools are doing to revolutionize, even at the horizontal layer. And some of like the ITSM tools, right? So these IT tools that are coming in, some of the security tools that are coming in, those are pretty exciting. Grain of salt. The security of them still very important, especially for somebody wearing multiple hats, right? But I think jury's out. I think that there is a substantial but profound, like we still have to. But I think jury's out for me a little bit. I'm excited, nervous, scared, but it's I'm not quite there yet.
Fair enough. No, but like one of the things I think about a lot is like, I remember back when like the internet was going to save democracy, right? Like they do was just like, look, we're going to connect everybody up and then everyone's going to get along and like it'll be a post-nation world, right? That didn't exactly pan out. But one of the things that like I always think about is like the internet fundamentally changed the cost of certain things and like, okay, cool. So then we can advance that and say, some people made good bets about that and some people didn't. And to your monetization point, I think you're absolutely right. Right now, we're still trying to figure out what the actual value is in certain places of these new things. And I think there's profound value in certain places. And it was just like, we haven't really like 100% lined up on it. So I think the world will look very different in 5 years and we'll look back and be like, I don't know what this generation's pets.com is, but there's something, right? It's kind of the general. Yeah, exactly right. So fair enough. That totally makes sense. So one of the things I'm also super interested in is like, and I think that you end up doing this in two ways, at least as we've talked about it, is like you're both talking to your business about other technologies, right? They bring you into like, hey, take a look at this stuff, that kind of thing. But also just you've had experience as an IT leader talking to business about technology. Like, if I'm a new leader starting out, like, and I'm starting to like bump into that, like I have to talk to profoundly non-technical or at least profoundly like uninterested, I guess, maybe, other business leaders about technology. Like, what are some lessons you've learned about like how to do that well, like to make people understand like, hey, IT is actually an enabler of the business. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's I think for folks that had dealt with, again, traditional IT, it's always a blocker. It's always just an expense carrier. It's a keep the lights on, keep the internet on, make the phones work, make my computer work more often, less blue screens. We don't see those very, very much anymore. But I think it's like, I get into the value chain and, what's very clear is, there's, starting everything at top of funnel and all the way down to RevRec. And I think it's very clearly laying out the chain, what we ship, how we market, how we sell, how we support, and how we continue, kind of keep this continuous loop for customer, right? Like, is the customer happy with the product or are they just like looking at their watch, waiting for it to get replaced? And like you and I both know there's vendors that are on both sides of that equation right now. And we, what you want to propose especially in this role is don't worry about it as IT. It's sort of like, and they do it here in VC land a little bit, like the head of IT is the head of tech. Okay. Because it is that, it's like the landscape is less so much like old school and is very new school. And that is just, it's business enablement more than anything. And that cuts that story to the customers is basically then you just, you do the upside down world of Stranger Things and be like, okay, now you're the customer. This is me. And I'm here to make you happy. And this is how I'm going to do it. Both your tech is going to just work And also, we're going to talk about enabling your function to be like, to move in a way that you didn't think was possible, or you were like, you heard that tech could possibly do that. I'm doing everything in my power with network and research and, it really like trying to expand my knowledge base to be able to then help you, and also bringing you along on the journey, because it isn't just me, it's an us thing. And then let me, in my expertise around, integrations and building the system of systems, let's get it so it's also part of the full story. So that way, when our sales rep creates a quote and that quote is approved and it's got all the layers of approval that we require, because that's what we say we do, that's attached, it's logged, we sell it, it's shipped right, where all the things are just happening, and the right amount of tools are in place to do that. And that's really what I'm here for. It's to right size the underlying tooling to create the value chain that is as lean as we can have it, and also allow us to scale.
So that makes tons of sense. One of the things that like I take out of that is this idea of like the curiosity of trying to understand what your customer actually needs, right? Like and one of the things I've heard from other folk as well is this idea that like, hey, I'm showing up to my end customer, I'm asking a lot of questions before I make a lot of statements, right? It's not so much like you will be issued this technology, thank you very much, that's what I've decided. It's a lot more, like, hey, just tell me about your job, tell me what you do on a given day, like what's frustrating, what's not frustrating, that kind of stuff, right? Which goes back interestingly to that empathy thing, right? Like places where I've talked to folks where people like are like, oh, our IT folks are awesome, right? They're hugely awesome. And when you really probe like why, you get the like, oh, because we have an actual relationship with them and like they actually are there to help us, right? Which is like a phenomenally different thing than a lot of places where they're like, we are going to reduce total cost of ownership, thank you very much, and you can go to the end of the line, kind of things.
Yeah. And I would chalk that up. Sorry to interrupt, but I would chalk that up to each business unit head is somebody you report to. And if you treat it that way, and you have quarterly check-ins, and that first one, your first 90 days, you set out to meet every single one, and it's like you're just asking questions. You're not, no statements. I just want to know, like, what are your biggest pain points? What do you think our job is together? What would you like to see out of me? Like, I would like to come back in 90 days and kind of tell you how we're doing so far, and then do that every 90 days. Are you cool with that? Nobody's saying no there, by the way. Everybody's like, yes, please. Because also there are people who are smarter than you in systems in their business function. There's those that are below that you're here to pick up, and the ones that are smarter that are going to elevate you. It's like, I hate to get Pitbull in the mix here, but he's like, the always strive to learn thing, in his own way.
Yep.
It's real, man. It's like continuous learning and education isn't just going back to school. It's like in the trenches of your everyday life. Like everything is a learning, and in business, especially in your function, the best thing you can do as the head of technology, as the head of IT, even the head of cybersecurity, is just listen. It's okay. It's fine. But be actionable with that, and always show results, because these folks in the business have to show results that they're being measured against. Sales have their sales number, right? Marketing is like, how many MQLs, like they've got real numbers, finance, accounting, like everybody's got real tangible results that they need to deliver, our churn numbers. It's incumbent on us to meet them and help them wherever possible, whenever possible.
I know that totally resonates. It makes sense. And I think one of the things I'm super interested in, I'm going to ask you a question. It's an on the spot, so it's kind of unfair, but I'm kind of interested in this. I was asked, like, are there particular questions if you're having that meeting with that leader, it's a first meeting or something like that, are there particular go-to questions that you have that are like the best, like icebreaker probing question to like get the now I really understand you?
Yeah. It's like, what do you wish either my predecessor or, if I was hired net new, like, what do you wish that whole or that person did that they didn't? It's the stop, start, and continue conversation without having it, right? That typical management, but it's just flipping it upside down and saying, what would you like me to start? What would you like the department to stop? And what should we continue? And just those three, Matt, and the thing I appreciate about our conversations is you and I know, like, we only need one question.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can literally pull the string. I've told folks, you can get every interview book in the world, but when you interview somebody, you literally just need one question, depending on what type of function they're going to do at what level. And you could just pull that thing, just keep pulling it, and it will give you everything you need to know about the person. That stop, start, and continue thing with, even, again, like a skip level, could totally, it works virtually everywhere.
No, that makes tons of sense. It is super interesting to me. I remember I talked to a sales leader years ago, and she said, like, on one of her first sales calls, she got the target that she really, really wanted on the phone, and she starts going through her thing, and partway through, he was like, "Hey, is this a survey or something?" Right? And it was like the worst in the world. So she got really good and like actually learned a lot from her about like, how do you ask the first question to be like, "Oh, that's super interesting. Let me ask a follow up," that kind of. So I'd become like sort of the man with 1,000 questions. But it's always interesting when you had that first meeting with somebody. How do you signal to them that you are actually interested in what they have to say? And then you like kind of leave it, good and open ended is pretty awesome. So I want to pivot then to one other question, and then I've got a sort of a wrap up I was asked, but like I'm curious. There is a narrative about the way that we think AI is going to unfold, which is effectively like it's going to just like gut entry level jobs, right? And I'm sort of curious because you're sort of seeing a lot of this new technology come through. You yourself have had a journey through IT, and so like I'm curious, like, what is your take on that narrative? Do you think that like if I'm a new graduate coming out of college, do I need to be terrified? Is it going to be like an apocalyptic hellscape dotted by fuel-starved mutants, or is it going to be the brave new world? Like, what are we thinking here in terms of like entry level folk and entry level jobs?
I'd love to know what the actual numbers were like this past summer across our industry, Matt, to be honest. Like, I know that because I'm in touch still at Santa Clara University with the MIS department, and kids struggle to get internships and entry-level jobs. And I think that the market right now, we're seeing market data. It's very real. Like there's a reduction of forces I think on the hope or on the back that this AI thing is like going to replace it. And I think that there's going to be an awakening, and that it'll swing back when shit isn't getting done anymore. It's like, why aren't the robots doing it? It's like, well, the people that used to write, like I said, used to write these jobs that would do automation, on the promise that
hire them. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think that the market is showing a negative trend, which I'm hoping stops. I firmly believe like we absolutely need folks in the workforce. And again, I think this ties back to the empathy thing, but I think this is a more overarching thing. And I hate to go down the philosophical road, and I won't go too far, but we're in this together. You and me, I'm looking at you through a camera, on a screen. You're seeing me through a camera on a screen. I know you and I would much rather be doing this in person.
Sure.
And the thing we can't lose sight of is that we're in this together, and what makes business work and function is highly functional people, building something that is a good idea or a great idea, and just making it run and making it hum.
Yeah.
Will there be some automation replacements? Yes. I think that there's always been that, like the different iterations of, mainframe to, client server architecture. And then we flip back and went cloud. Are we going to go back to client server? Probably not. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that the IT departments, were super lean, got bloated, got lean, got bloated. So maybe I think this is just a lean phase, and then we'll sort of grow a little bit more to basically just enable these things that are going fast to go right. So I don't know. I'm trying to be more bullish. I hope that this last year is just a blip.
Mm-hmm.
But we still need folks to sell things. We still need folks to, build marketing plans and execute those plans. Yeah, I don't know. I value my daughter's artistic. I value her art that she draws by hand on paper over the one she draws on an iPad versus the one that you tell Sora to go draw, right? And are we intelligent enough to differentiate between the three? I don't think technically yes. So a little bit of me gets sad there, but I still think that we need, we do need people to do jobs.
It is a fascinating thing to think about, like what it asks about value, right? One of the things that just to call out, and then I got one more question for you, was like, I remember when the internet like really turned into a real honest to God thing, and like webinars and stuff like that were really, really a key thing. And I remember reading articles at the time where they were like, well, this is probably the death of trade shows. Right. Las Vegas is still out there, right? It's still just just burning up the desert. And the reason is because turns out people like people, right? And so we're going to keep doing that. And I think I think what will be fascinating is like where people end up in this and like where we decide. And this is the bet that we've always made is like, we believe that there are still places for people in this. Okay. So last question we always ask this. Okay. So one resource, a book or a podcast or a blog or something that you read that you would recommend unreservedly to the folks.
I'm a privacy junkie. EFF's got a podcast, How to Fix the Internet, and it's very privacy focused. I think if you have a job in security, or with some security, or you miss privacy and you want it back, it's just a nice, refreshing. There's an organization that's completely focused on it and giving back. It's outside of the boundaries of work, so it just allows you to sort of color just our shared experience about kind of getting that privacy back. That's one that I love. I think one that's a little more work focused is not a podcast, but it continues to be undefeated in my mind, and that's situational leadership. I don't know if you're a Ken Blanchard guy. That was one of the great things that I did get from Gap was getting situational leadership and all the tenets of it. I preach it still today. People that are getting into management or want to get into management, you can take situational self-leadership and just and I'm not getting paid by either EFF or Ken Blanchard. I think Mr. Blanchard and the whole estate are doing just fine. But EFF could use your support. But in any case, those two a little bit out of bounds, but I think are both valuable for anybody in any facet of business, period.
Super. Well, legit. Well, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it. It's always great to catch up.
Matt, I look forward to the next time we're actually together. Like I said, I enjoy every conversation. Thanks for doing this.